Good evening. Welcome into the Irish NFL show presented by Cassidy Travel on a Wednesday night as we look ahead to the Thursday night slate. Michael McQuaid joined by Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockerell, and also senior NFL writer at The Athletic, Kalyn Kahler. Keelan, I just realized I pronounced your surname wrong. I'm so sorry. We're live right now. It's
No,
a
you
very,
did it
very
right.
warm welcome.
Yeah, Kaylor is right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. I'm delighted I got that correct. And a very, very warm welcome. Keelan, tell us about yourself. Have you any relations to Ireland? Have you been to Ireland before?
I have actually. I've been to Dublin, and I think I went to is Kilkenny near Dublin? Yeah, kind of like an hour, 2 hours south.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about an hour and a half, maybe.
Okay, that's close. What are you guys talking about? That's very close. That's a short drive.
I've never been to Kilkenny in my life. I'm just gonna put that out
So
there.
I've
So
been there too. And also I Irish dance my whole life basically. And I currently am an Irish dance teacher as my side hustle, aside from covering the NFL. So last night, is it Wednesday? Yeah, last night I was teaching Irish dance for 4 hours. So I am spiritually very Irish, even though I'm not super biologically Irish. I'm like 6% Irish or something very small.
You see, Kaylin, the American context of how far something is an Irish context.
Yeah.
You can drive the entire island in like 6 hours. 6 hours wouldn't get you anywhere in Texas.
Right.
Um, so it's a little bit different, but as Michael said, we are delighted to have you on, and it's impressive that you have a side hustle given the your work in terms of, obviously you've come through Monday Morning QB. You worked with Peter King for a time, and
Yeah.
obviously now with the Athletic, and you had a really kind of interesting piece last week around kind of rookie head coaches, play calling, situational coaching, and stuff like that. We will get to Nathaniel Hackett maybe a little bit later.
Yeah.
But one of the coaches who maybe didn't feature in that piece quite as prominently, but whose team we will see tomorrow and who has been very successful through the first 3 weeks is Mike McDaniel and those Dolphins. And I'm just interested, I suppose, in your take in what McDaniel has been able to do with the team there, I suppose, and Tua and the weapons that he has. But he has beaten Belichick, he's beaten Harbaugh, and he's beaten Sean McDermott.
Yeah, it's been really impressive. I think this last week's win was obviously the most impressive because the Bills had been just shellacking every opponent this year so far. And obviously, it had just been 2 games of their utter dominance, but they had been extremely dominant. And I found myself thinking, is anyone going to beat the Bills this year? Like, or is this going to be an undefeated team? Because they just looked so good. So I think Sunday's game was really the most impressive for the Dolphins. And I actually still need to, it's on my to-do list. So much has been going on this week. I'm working on a Brett Favre story, so it's been kind of crazy. But anyways, I was at the Bears game on Sunday, which was going on at the same time as the Dolphins game. So I actually didn't get to keep a very close eye on that game, it's on my list to go back and watch like the condensed version on Game Pass, because I was looking at the stats after the game, and I've already said this on like 2 radio hits and podcasts this week, but I just still can't get over it. And if you look at the stats of the Bills offense from that game, you would think they won by 40 points, because the Bills had 400 passing yards. The Dolphins had, I think, 197, so half of that. The Bills had 31 first downs. The Dolphins had 16, again, half. They had 90 offensive plays, which is the craziest stat to me, because as we all know, I'm sure everyone watching this knows, you usually have like 50 offensive plays, somewhere around 50, like 60 would be like a lot. So 90 is just incredible. Like, think of your defense being on the field for 90 plays. It's amazing. I think that impresses me the most, is that you can have your opponent have stats like that, and yet you somehow came away with the win. That's just kind of mind blowing. So And particularly because they play in Miami where it was like 90 degrees. I mean, and they're playing again tomorrow night. So tomorrow is going to be tough, but I think I would pick the Dolphins. I'd pick the Dolphins tomorrow night.
Ken, yeah, my question is around the Bengals, the opponents tomorrow. There's been, I suppose, a mixed reaction to their start of the season. Some feel it's a Super Bowl hangover. Zach Taylor has been challenged around his play calling. The offensive line last season was erratic. They got to the Super Bowl, but it came back to haunt them in the Super Bowl. And whilst they did a lot in free agency, it hasn't really materialised on the field just yet. What's your overall thoughts so far on how the Bengals have progressed?
Yeah, I think the first couple weeks were close losses at least, so it wasn't like they were getting blown out. But I think I was most concerned about really for like the last 2 years, the Bengals had been starting really slow on offense. I don't have the story in front of me, but if you guys are interested, I think it was Jay Morrison who covers the Bengals for The Athletic. He had a interesting breakdown last week of the Bengals offense on the first 2 drives of every game versus like drives 3 through 10 of every game. And their performance was noticeably like a lot worse on the first 2 drives of the game, which I thought was concerning for a couple of reasons, because those really should be some of your best drives in the game because it's your scripted drives where you have sat down with your head coach, your offensive coordinator, and if you're the quarterback and you've all gotten in the same room, you've been like, yep, these are the 20 plays that we really like. And so theoretically, like those should be the ones that work for you. And so the fact that those really weren't working for Cincinnati, I thought that was a little bit concerning. And I thought, I was one of the people who was saying like, oh, maybe Zach Taylor should think about delegating play calling. Because defenses have kind of figured them out. And over the first 2 games and last week, they're playing like 2 deep with their safeties. So preventing anything getting deep down the field, keeping everything in front of them. And it just seemed like they were really struggling to adapt to that. And theoretically, if the defense is playing that way, you should be able to run the ball better, but they also weren't running the ball better. So there was a lot of concerning things with that offense. And I do think the offensive line is going to slowly improve. It kind of reminds me of the Chiefs last year, who was it last year? Was last year after their Super Bowl loss, right? Yeah. I'm like, am I missing a season? But after the Chiefs lost to the Bucks, they did a lot to rework that offensive line. And I do think it took probably until kind of the midpoint of last season for that offensive line to really show noticeable improvement, because so much of that is about communication and being comfortable with each other and just, more experience. So I think the Bengals will probably be okay. Yeah, I think they'll probably be okay. And I think for the time being, with that win on Sunday, Zach Taylor kind of got us off his back for a second. We'll see how long it lasts.
Kalyn, I'm just glad if you're doing a story on Brett Favre that volleyball isn't your side hustle, but Irish dancing is. That's probably safer.
Yeah.
You mentioned Miami there, and you mentioned also about play calling, and I kind of want to turn your attention to the AFC West, which before the season started, with general understanding, everyone was raving about the best division in football. Obviously, some huge off-season moves going on there. But we turn to it, and yes, it's only been 3 weeks, but the Chiefs just got humbled last week. The Chargers resemble a mash unit. The Broncos' offense isn't performing, though their defense certainly is. And we're not really quite sure what's going on in Las Vegas generally. What's your take on this? Is it going to improve and we're going to see the dynamic teams that everyone predicted at the start of the season? Or is it that we just had it all wrong and it's going to be a slog for the rest of the year?
Wait, what did you say the Chargers resemble?
A MASH unit. I was using MASH, the 50s show in Vietnam, Mobile Surgical Hospital. Yeah, I know. I'm showing my age here, Kalyn.
I'm like, is that an Irish reference that I don't
know? We'll go ER.
No,
there you go. That's more up to date.
Okay, great. The Chargers. The Chargers are just a cursed franchise, clearly. The injuries there to key significant players is really a bummer, because like I I mean, I still think I don't know. I mean, I picked them. I didn't write this anymore, but in my mind, I picked them as a Super Bowl team this year. Like I was like really high on them because I think Brandon Staley is a really good coach and Justin Herbert is like my favorite quarterback in the league. So I was super excited about them this season, and I still think they can get there. I'm now just concerned about all of the injuries, obviously, and I don't know. It's an interesting debate to have. We were debating on Slack, like, could we ever be able to prove that like a certain team is more injured consistently than others, and then why is that? And there is a website that does track like really detailed injury. I think it's called what is it called? Man something. I don't remember the full name of it, but you can pay a subscription and they have like some insane injury data for every team where they're tracking it over years. And so I think you could probably build an argument that might show you that, like, yes, the Chargers are more injured than like your average NFL team season over season. But also this stuff is so random because you saw the Ravens last year get absolutely obliterated by injury, and like, who knows? There's not really a pattern there. Anyways, that's a long way to say that I'm really sad about the Chargers because I was super excited about that team and still am, but I hope they can get things back healthy. The Raiders confuse me, and I think it's just like, I don't know. I don't really know what's going on there. I mean, last year they were a playoff team and they had an interim staff and had like so much turmoil during that season with Henry Ruggs and John Gruden and just so much going on. Yet it was still a playoff team. So it's strange to me that they make, the head coaching hire they really want to make. They decide not to keep Rich Bisaccia, who is now in Green Bay, as their special teams coordinator, and things just have gotten a lot worse. So, but McDaniels is such a good offensive coordinator, so it's like, what is happening? And I honestly, I feel like it might just be that McDaniels' offense is so complicated because as soon as he left New England, like New England this summer, all they could talk about was how they were simplifying their offense because McDaniels had left and they could actually do that. So that, because he was there for so long, that offensive playbook, I think, became like just a monster of some really complicated concepts, and the words that they used, I think, became really, really difficult. And so I don't know exactly how much of that McDaniels took to Las Vegas, but it just seems like Derek Carr is really not quite comfortable with it yet. And it also seems like frustration is definitely mounting, at least from what Devontae Adams has been saying in his press conferences. He seems to be really frustrated with the way that they can't finish games. The Broncos, I mean, it was better, I guess, on Sunday, but it was still terrible. They're just lucky that they played the Niners, who wouldn't let their quarterback join training camp for the entire time. So he has like no chemistry with his offense anymore. Yeah, I don't know about the Broncos. I wouldn't be surprised if Hackett was a 1-year head coach and then is fired at the end of the season. And it might not even necessarily be because he's like bad. I think it might just be because they had an ownership change. And if ownership doesn't see what they want to see in the first year, they might be like, we're going to start over. And I do think Hackett, it makes a lot of sense. I don't have any reporting on this, but it makes a lot of sense that Hackett would have been hired there under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers was going to follow him. And when Aaron Rodgers doesn't follow him, he becomes a little bit less valuable. So I wouldn't be surprised if it really turned into like a 1-year thing in Denver. I think it's good that he hired Jerry Rosberg to help him with game management. He's a retired head coach who was a special teams coach for the Ravens for a long time, and he just joined their staff last week. So he was helping out on Sunday night. I think that was a really good idea. Which team didn't I talk about yet? We did Raiders, Chargers, Broncos.
Chiefs.
Oh, the Chiefs. Yeah. I think the Chiefs will be fine. I think they're figuring it out without Tyreek Hill. And we've seen how valuable Tyreek Hill is now that he's in Miami and has really elevated that offense. But I think the Chiefs will be okay. I'm not really I'm not really concerned about them.
One team that I'm not concerned about, actually, do you know what? I have to address this. The whole Russell Wilson subway thing. Has everybody seen that over the last?
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's
The chick,
unbelievable stuff. Best content I've seen this season, and it's probably better than anything he's done in the field so far. Okay, one team that's doing really well is the Eagles. They're flying.
Yeah.
Like, my God. Are you surprised at how well they've done so far, Kalyn? And do you think they can take it up a level? Because their schedule over the next 4 to 5 weeks is favourable with a capital F.
I'm a little bit surprised, like, that they are 3-0. I don't know that I would have predicted that as the start to the season. I mean, I'm pretty sure I would have predicted them as a playoff team, but this is a really, really good start. And I think the most impressive aspect of it is how Jalen Hurts has developed in the passing game and as a passer. Because this is a player who literally transferred from Alabama to Oklahoma because they didn't believe in him as a passer. They didn't think he could throw. And NFL teams were kind of evaluating him as a tailback and not a quarterback. So this is a player who his whole career has really had to prove himself in that area and fight against that, view that people have of him. And so that's been the most impressive thing to me, because his passing stats are really well. I actually have his first half passing stats from week 2 and week 3 in front of me right now, because they've been kind of slow in the second half. Like, I think the Eagles, I don't know how many points they've scored in the second half of games, but they've been noticeably better in the first half of games. And his first half stats in week 3, 18 of 27, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 137.7 quarterback rating. So really good stuff. So he's really improved. And I think that's the part that surprises me the most. I mean, they did make some really great moves in the offseason, like bringing in AJ Brown. That was great. And so you knew they were going to have a little bit more firepower on the offense, but I didn't know exactly how, Jalen Hurts' development was going to continue to progress. So that's been fun to watch.
And I suppose, Kalyn, they're going to be going up in a bit of a revenge match for Doug this weekend with the Jags. And if you've been surprised by the Eagles a little bit, have you been surprised by the way in which Doug has been able to turn around the Jags so quickly? Or was it that always likely to be the case, given the kind of circus that was Urban Meyer's ill-fated tenure?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, Trevor Lawrence should be good. And it was surprising last year that he wasn't good. That's more surprising than him actually being a functional quarterback now. So yeah, I'm not really surprised that Doug Peterson was able to do that, because he's already an experienced head coach. And I mean, it was so bad last year. It was so bad that the bar was just so low that anyone who was just a normal person, any coach, I mean, they could have hired any former head coach, I think, and be getting similar results, because it was just so terrible under Urban Meyer. So I'm not actually that surprised, but I do think Doug Peterson was a really good hire, because he's got the experience. He's, offensive minded. He's that former quarterback guy. So I do think that was a really good hire for them. And that'll be an interesting game. But I'm not surprised.
Kalyn, Colin mentioned circus. We've had the Tom Brady circus for 8-9 months now. Retirement, unretirement. Takes 10 days off during training camp. Now he has every Wednesday off. What's your take on it? Because obviously the offense has started very slowly, and some people are suggesting Brady's just, his head is not in the game, but obviously they've got a lot of injuries. Is it a mixed bag, or do you feel Brady's just not at the kind of intensity that we're used to seeing in terms of his commitment to the situation?
I do think something weird is going on with him. And I think it's probably just the fact that he can't quit football. He literally cannot, even if it would be the best thing for him, he cannot quit unless he's going to win again. But I don't know. Even if he wins again, I don't think he's going to quit. So I don't know what the answer I don't know what this man is looking for. but he's clearly I think he's clearly different. Like what you just mentioned, like I don't think he's all in the way that he has been in the past. And that's something he would always say when he was going through, am I coming back or not? He'd be like, well, if I can't be all in, I'm not coming back. But I think now we do see him having come back and not being all in. And he's making, and as he should, he's making some compromises to, spend more time with his family or spend more time with his wife or whatever it is. Those are the compromises that he's making, which is like a healthy decision. But for a football team that, it seems like a lot of guys on that team came back this season because Tom decided to come back, and they're kind of throwing it all in for one more run at a Super Bowl. I don't know if it's going to work in the long run if he's not all in. So something weird is I think something weird is going on there. I don't know exactly what, but I don't feel great about it. Although their defense has been amazing. I'll say that. Their defense has been stunning. Through the first 3 weeks. They've been doing some really cool stuff. Like they had Vita Vea dropping back into coverage on Sunday night, which was like amazing. He's this giant man. And he made a great play. So that was like really cool. So I'm into the Bucs defense. I'm not really into their offense right now.
Kalyn, I was going to make a reference to a song called Money by Pink Floyd, but I'm going to maybe say It's All About the Price Tag by Jessie J to bring it a bit more up to date. And the biggest price tag in the NFL is the price of quarterbacks. And I know it's not in season, but we're already fascinated with how it's going to play out next season. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert are going to be up for potential extensions. Arguably, some teams might have to make a decision on people like Jalen Hurts and Tua. But for me, the most fascinating contract saga will be that of the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson and his mum obviously helping on the contract. And certainly through 3 weeks, he has done nothing to hurt his value in the NFL. Again, especially given the whole dynamic with Russell Wilson's contract, the unusually guaranteed and structured contract given to Deshaun Watson by the Browns. What's your take on how that's going to play, and what are you hearing out of Baltimore in terms of negotiations to take place again after the season, because they didn't get it done before the season?
Well, it's interesting because when Deshaun Watson first got his fully guaranteed deal, I think we all thought every quarterback was going to get one, and it was going to start a pattern of these crazy fully guaranteed contracts. But two really good quarterbacks have since re-signed or signed extensions or done new deals, Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray, neither of whom received fully guaranteed contracts, because for those guys, they, weighed other parts of the deal to be more important. And, they're similarly lucrative, you would say, if you're comparing them. So I thought that was kind of interesting that we didn't see that actually become a trend yet. And I'm not sure if we will, because, and I know teams are going to fight it really hard, but you have to be in a unique situation as a team to be able to have that type of cash like on hand and able to guarantee it in that way. And not every team is in a situation where they can do that. So it'll be interesting. Like, I don't think the Chargers are really in a situation that they can guarantee that money for Justin Herbert when he's up. So it's interesting. And I think like Lamar is after that. Probably it seems like he's after that or something similar to that, because whatever it was that the Ravens were offering him, he didn't think that was what he wanted. And I respect the fact that he's betting on himself, and I just really hope he doesn't get hurt, because I do think it will work out for him as long as he stays healthy. I do think it will work out for him, because I mean, I don't see the Ravens letting him go. I mean, I don't know why they would do that. That would be kind of silly. So I think they're just going to have to, I don't know, meet his demands or meet somewhere closer to the middle for him after this season. And if he keeps playing the way he's playing, it's going to work in his favor as long as he doesn't get hurt. So hope he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, and given some of the injuries, obviously we've seen around the league, it hasn't been a good week for that. But this has been fantastic, Kalyn. We know you have another meeting that you have to jump out to. We could have kept this going, I think, yeah, for another 20 minutes easily, but we would love to have you back on later in the season. And for our viewers and for people who will be listening on the podcast, where can they find your stuff if they want to check out more?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Kalyn Kahler. It's spelled weird, so I'll just spell it for you. KALYNKAHLER. And then at The Athletic, you can find my work. And I'll also plug Defector, my former employer, because I'm wearing their shirt right now, because they're a really great website. Another subscription sports website, but it's like stories that you're not going to find elsewhere with a really funny bend to it. So if you like humor and sarcasm and that kind of stuff, Defector is going to be your jam. And if you want good reporting and good columns and good insight and plugged in stuff, The Athletic is probably your jam. So, but both of them, you should just subscribe to both probably. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was great to meet you all.
Thanks so much, and we'll definitely talk to you again later in the season.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kalyn. Thank you. Great to have Kalyn and some really insightful points on numerous teams there. Really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, that's us. Before we start the next segment, Sunday 9:30, Tottenham Umbrellas, Kirk Cousins. Can we announce guests yet? No, we can't.
We can, yeah. I believe so.
Okay. Arif Hassan is coming on. Arif. So looking forward to it. And okay.
And Jeff Duncan.
Yeah.
And Michael's going to go again.
Yeah. And if you're watching this live or listening to, well, you won't be listening to the full thing, so it's all good. Okay, here we go. Brian's wearing a lovely t-shirt tonight. It's a nice shade of red, Brian. I just went full black, just tonight for the crack. Okay, so Thursday Night Football this week is an intriguing one. We have got the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Miami invincible Dolphins now after beating the Buffalo Bills, it seems. I thought honestly, Colin, you'd have seen bigger you probably wouldn't have seen bigger celebrations than Miami winning the Super Bowl 50 years ago to this year, actually, or Tyrone winning their first Sam Maguire, or Man United winning the game, or Michael getting FIFA on Tuesday. Big moments for the Dolphins last weekend. They go in Thursday Night Football, and thanks to everyone watching live with the comments. They go in on Thursday Night Football against this team. The game is in Cincinnati. It's a whiteout. This seems to be the thing now. Teams just seem to wear white jerseys for some reason, and maybe I'm starting to show my age at 31 and a half, that I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just a complete market ploy, but I get it. But I think Joey Burrow is going to have an interesting game. Let's start off. So we're going to pick this game, and then we're going to pick a few games from Sunday's action outside of the London game. Colin, who have you got in this game? Tua? Teddy? Joey?
Well, I will say, Michael, I don't think there's any sport, any league, anywhere, anything that does marketing to the extent and to the quality that the NFL has done, and that has only increased over the last decade. I know that, for instance, when Manchester United built the first mega store, which was more than 30 years ago now, they talked then about the influence that they had by the San Francisco 49ers, and the fact that I remember reading a line at the time how there were undiscovered tribes in the Amazon that had 49ers hats. So that's how far the marketing goes back. And I actually think the one thing I really do like is those Bengals white helmets. I actually think those look fantastic. This game, look, you got if they're all fit, Burrow, Tua, Chase, Waddle, Hill, Eli Apple, all the stars are here. and it should be a fascinating matchup. Zach Taylor is 0-2 against the Dolphins, and to me, I think whether that is 1-2 or 0-3 at the end of it is on Tua's health. If Tua is healthy, I believe that the Dolphins, despite the injuries that they have, and it seems if you look around the league today, the injury reports are just crazy. We have Jonathan Taylor missing his first practice since he came into the league, etc., etc. So lots of teams carrying injuries, but I believe that they have the speed and the weapons to take advantage of the Bengals secondary. I think the Bengals will score points, but the Bengals have got to kind of work that running game and get that motoring. So for me, as long as Tua plays, if it's Teddy, it's the Bengals. But if Tua is fit, I believe the Dolphins will win.
Tua's being confirmed as questionable for tomorrow with an ankle, a back, and a rib injury. But they expect him to go. But again, how fit will he be? It's a quick turnaround.
Sounds like you on a Saturday night, Brian. Sorry, I had to.
Which Saturday night was that, Michael?
I'm joking. It's 10. It's 10:30 on the Wednesday night. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's questionable. My bad.
There's two quotes I love this week. I love Mike McDaniel. Right? He's charismatic. He's eccentric. They can see why the players love him. He comes out and says, "Hype and power rankings don't get you to the playoffs," because people were actually saying, "Look how high you are the right card." And then you've got Eli Apple coming out with all the chippiness around the fact that he held Tyreek Hill in check in the championship game. Never mind the rest of the games he played throughout the course of the season where he was terrible, and the Super Bowl where he, was left exposed to Cooper Kupp twice in the end zone. He talks about that one particular game where he did play well. I'm with Colin. I think if Tua plays, it's the Dolphins. I'm surprised that the Dolphins are not favourites in this. Maybe it's the home factor. The Bengals haven't played at home since week 1. The crowd will be up for Thursday night. I'm not mad about their white helmets and their white outfit, to be honest, Michael. It's a bit off-putting if you ask me. So I will go with the team. I think we'll be wearing green tomorrow night. And in a week where a team in green struggled to be one of the lower teams in international football, this Bengals team are supposed to be high up there, but I don't believe they will be come the end of the season. I said they wouldn't make the playoffs. They're going in that direction. For me, it's the Dolphins.
I just get the sense that the former Giants first round pick, Eli Apple, has left an indelible stain in Brian's conscience forevermore. And that he's not best pleased, nor with his boasting, shall we say, this week of how he held Tyreek Hill. Tyreek's been very clear. He said, I've got a memory. I'm coming for you. The cheater's coming for you. But you say you like some quotes this week. Tua on the podium said, yeah, I'm telling you now, if Tyreek's one-on-one, I'm going to Tyreek. I'm telling you now, that's where the ball's going. I like that kind of trash talking. Speaking of trash, when Joe Burrow got up to the podium, he was asked about the white uniforms, and he says, I don't really care if we play in trash bags. I'll play in whatever they put on me. Basically, I don't really want to talk about fashion sense here. More than anything. Yes, it's a marketing play, Michael. Yes, it's designed to sell more alternate jerseys and things like that. And yes, it's going to work. And the NFL will continue to print bucket loads of money every time it goes around. In terms of the players on the field, Tua is the key. I mean, he's been the key to the Dolphins for the last while. And he's definitely the key this season. 71% of his passes, second in passing yards behind Josh Allen. He's thrown for 8 touchdowns already. That's half the total he threw in 13 games last year. So he definitely looks better, and who wouldn't with Hill and Waddle and all their other weapons coming to fruition. They remain unbeaten at the moment, the Dolphins, them and the Eagles. Only 2 left. It's very interesting. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I'm sure some Dolphins fans are pointing out they're the exact same as the 72 team so far. Haven't lost the game yet. But whilst they will definitely lose a game during this season, I don't think it's going to be tonight. The Bengals are a talented team. They've equally exciting wide receivers, but that offensive line is a continued problem. The Dolphins got good pressure on Josh Allen, and he's got a far better O-line than the Bengals have, and that's the key thing on a short week. As long as Tua's healthy, the Dolphins will take this game.
Okay, I have statistically, Michael has watched every primetime game so far this season, and you can see it under my eyes. I've got more holes under my eyes than I've got in the Glen Shane pass on the road side at the minute. It's not good. I'm not going to watch this game because I'm flying at 7 o'clock on Friday morning to London town. So if anyone is in London and listening to this, hit your boy up over the weekend. And maybe Colin will join us on Saturday and Brian on Sunday. I was recording a podcast prior to this, and I found out through watching game tape that the Buffalo Bills were on the field and had 90 offensive plays on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins, to the point where the Dolphins are beat up and they now have to go in 3 days later. Lads, this is easy. Whether Tua plays or not, Joe Burrow's going to go out and throw it, sling it down the field, run the ball with Mixon, and Jamar Chase will have a couple of touchdowns, and I genuinely think it won't be close. I'm going Cincinnati. I think this is the one where the Dolphins mess up. I really, really do, and I feel that the Eagles will be the one team in the league with a winning record come Sunday night, and it's close to being a lock of the week for me, and I can see why the Bengals are favoured. They're playing at home. They have to win this game. They had a really, really poor start to the season offensively, and guys like Von Bell, Mike Hilton are going to have to show up on the other side of the ball. But Joe Burrow has been there in AFC Championship games. He didn't get over the line last season in the Super Bowl. He's under pressure. Whether people want to admit it or not, the Bengals need to win. Zach Taylor needs to find a way to close out a game, and I think that the Bengals will win and create loads of storylines. Because there's some great matchups this weekend, and it's crap that we're going to be sitting in the press box and missing all the early games on Sunday. And this is a great game as well. I'd love to stay up and watch it, but Cincinnati for me, lads. Okay, right. Sorry, I thought someone had a point, so I'm just going to move on. Okay, the next game that we're going to look at is... I've got a sore throat, live on this. I wonder if I got COVID. Mark, you can have my press pass if it's COVID. Okay, on Sunday.
I'll be in New York, Michael, so I won't be able to take it, I'm afraid.
Oh God, you're not going to watch the Jets or the Giants, are you? Anyway, that was a joke. Browns, Falcons. What a game this is. The Falcons beat the Seahawks last week. The Browns march on last week. Colin, what's your thoughts on this Browns-Falcons game? It's all the hallmarks of a classic in the making, isn't it?
It genuinely does, Michael. These are the only two teams to have scored at least 26 points in all 3 games. So this could be an absolute shootout between the two of them. The Falcons have been incredibly frisky. They have all sorts of weapons, and just maybe, good old Arthur Smith has figured out how to actually utilize Kyle Pitts, who is an absolute mismatch. The other thing is that for the Browns is will Myles Garrett play, given the car crash, and thankfully it doesn't seem to have been serious, but we don't know whether he will play. I think for me that this comes down to, though, Nick Chubb is the best running back in the league currently. He this season is ahead of Jonathan Taylor, and he's ahead of Derrick Henry. And so the Browns have that, and Jacoby can manage a game, certainly, and he's up against, whilst the Atlanta offense is fantastic, their defense has allowed the highest completion percentage. It's 6th most in total passing yards and 3rd in terms of passing touchdowns. I just think that this will be a high-scoring game. Both teams will put up points, but ultimately, I think the Falcons still need more reinforcements on the defensive side of things for them to really challenge. So I'm going to say the Browns will win.
Yeah, Colin calls out the Myles Garrett situation with the car crash this week. They've also lost Anthony Walker Jr., who's one of their standout players for the season. Big loss. And Jacob Phillips has come in. He's been inconsistent in his 2 years there. He played reasonably well last week. But the Browns against the Steelers last week, as poor as Steelers have been, they played quite well in the first half. In the second half, they shut them down. They only gave up 3 points. They held Harris to 60 yards. It looked like the defense was getting back to what we've seen over the years. Offensively, like Jacoby Brissett, we were tough on him in terms of our season preview show, but in fairness, he said something really good in his press conference this week. There's a lot to be said for being in a camp for 4 months and learning an offense. And the last 2 games, he's gone for over 200 yards. He seems to be striking up a good relationship with Amari Cooper. He's gone for 3 games in a row with 100 plus yards and a touchdown in each game. There is some bright spots for the Browns. They really should be 3-0 after the unfortunate meltdown against the Jets. And with Chubb and with Hunt, as well as the Falcons are playing offensively, we saw the flaws last week on defense. Like they gave Seattle an opportunity, a poor Seattle team last week, to potentially win the game at the end. They allowed Geno to go up and down for large parts of the game on them. I don't see how they can live with the Browns team. I think the Browns will win the game comfortably.
Yeah, Colin rightly calls out that both these teams have more than 26 points average per game on offense. They're also both conceding more than 24 points on average per game on defense. And yes, it's only 3 games and it's a small statistical output, but that's a very high number, especially when you consider the Falcons have had 2 of their games against the Seahawks and the Saints, who do not exactly look like, murderers row in that regard. Well, they're not mirroring the Chiefs or the Eagles or the Dolphins, let's say that. So that's a concern for the Falcons in terms of they conceding it just as good a lick as they're scoring. But Mariota's been rebuilding his reputation, obviously, after a disappointing tenure, I suppose, overall, you would say, at the Titans. Interesting and back up in Vegas last year, and he's starting and he's playing well, and there's a couple of good plays every week, but it does look a bit Kyler Murray light for the most part. Although he is playing with a very, very reduced supporting cast. You look at the cast that Brissett has got to play with in the Browns, and especially that Chubb-Hunt combination, rushing for over 190 yards a game. That's going to help you win a hell of a lot of games. And just by way of just looking ahead in the future, let's be really clear. The Browns need to win this game. Because after this game, their schedule goes Chargers, Patriots, right, they might win that one. Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, Bucks. That is a murderer's row, if ever I saw one coming up. So getting up to 3-1, and probably, as Brian says, they should be 4-0, is absolutely essential. I've got the Browns dominating with their run game and making it 3-1 at least.
Yeah, the Browns have been a really interesting team to watch over the first few weeks of the season, albeit they did not get over the line against the Jets, and that was a tricky situation. I can't wait to see people's picks for the Jets game, boys. Just to put it out there, I cannot wait to hear people, because the Pittsburgh Jets game is, I think it's the hardest game to pick this week, personally. Amari Cooper's been a real asset to him coming in, especially when you've got such a inconsistency at quarterback level. Jacoby Brissett's came in and played really, really well. I think that Chubb and Hunt are going to be stopped by the Falcons, and I think that Drake London is going to have minimum 1 touchdown. I think Kyle Pitts finally scores on American soil. And I just feel that this Falcons offense, led by Mariota, who is currently completing 63% of his passes. Maybe he might need to do better than that on Sunday to get up there, but I genuinely think when you have Rashawn Evans, Richie Grant, and AJ Terrell there, that they're going to come up on the day and win the game. In Atlanta, I think if you stop the run, you'll stop the Browns, get the offense going, Falcons win. I'm going full Brian on these picks, first 2 in. Is that a thing now? But I'm going with the Falcons to beat the Browns, and I don't think it's an upset. I think they played really well against Seattle on the offense, and I'm looking forward to this game on Sunday. What's the next game? As we check the schedule.
Bills and Ravens, yeah.
Okay, public announcement. I've messed up the picks here. Watch this. This was me being
That's just wishful thinking, Michael. That's just wishful thinking.
So I apologize on that. I'll just keep this up instead. And it's my bad, lads. I'm sorry. It's not easy. It's not easy living life on top. I mean, somebody's got to set the FIFA Ultimate Team this week. Colin, why is this game not flexed to Sunday Night Football? And before everyone says there's a whole, it has to be 8 weeks in, you can't flex it. There's a hurricane in Florida. Flex the damn game. That being said, if anybody, folks, is on the 7:45 flight to Belfast from Stansted on Monday morning, hit me up. We can watch the game in 40 Sunday Night Football. This game should be Sunday Night Football. It's not. This game isn't even on TV in Ireland, Colin.
Well, that was kind of top of my notes as well, Michael, was why isn't this on prime time? And even before the season started, this isn't one of those games, right? Say the Eagles against the Jags, or even the Falcons against the Browns, where you're kind of looking at it now saying this could be really good. This is a game that everyone probably would have kind of circled anyway as being one of the the more interesting games to keep an eye on, and certainly it will be. I look here's a stat I saw earlier, and we all know how much I know about betting, but I do know in terms of Lamar Jackson is a 3.5 underdog. And it's only the third time that Lamar has been the underdog at home. And the last 2 times that Lamar has been the underdog, he has won. Because every time somebody tries to doubt Lamar Jackson, that only seems to encourage him. And the Ravens doubted him in terms of the contract. And my goodness, are they going to pay for it? They better find a way to put that money in escrow, because that, to me, is the biggest issue that the Ravens are going to face in terms of trying to re-sign him. I think that maybe that's the real sticking point, is what you have to put in escrow. But Michael, that is also why games can't get flexed, because you hurt billionaires' feelings, and you're not allowed to hurt billionaires' feelings.
I mean, just a one-off as a hurricane, just a one-off.
What doesn't matter? Doesn't matter. Hurricane, nothing. It won't matter. Billionaires are billionaires, and the agreement is in place, so they're never going to change that. Apparently the hurricane though could impact on this game as well, with the tail end of it hitting Baltimore. I actually think that would probably favor the Ravens if that were to be the case, because the Bills, it's all on Josh Allen. I said it on Monday Night Show, and I still believe it to be the case, and I have picked them for the Super Bowl. The Bills are going to be fine, but I think they're going to have their wobble a little bit earlier than the Rams had theirs. I think they're still getting players back. I don't think they're exactly where they want to be, and I still think they have things to sort out on the offense. So I'm going to say that Lamar Jackson continues his MVP type form, and he leads the Ravens to victory.
Brian, betting podcast out on Friday morning. We talked about this, earlier on. As Colin has correctly mentioned, fair play to Colin, 3.5 point favourites on the handicap. I think the over and under is 52 as we sit here now, or 54.5. I don't see the value in this game in terms of picking, and we'll talk about that on the betting podcast. But it's hard to predict, isn't it? This game in terms of the money line, the over and under is a bit different, and there's going to be points between both these teams.
I'll just answer the question on the over-under. I see it being an under because the weather, Colin alluded to the weather and the adverse weather conditions. The Bills have gone from playing 40 degrees heat last weekend to a potential downpour on Sunday by all accounts. It's going to be a bloodbath with rain and more rain. And for me, that suits the Baltimore Ravens more than it does this Buffalo Bills team. And you look at the Bills' injury roster at the moment, it hasn't cleared up from last weekend. Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips, Pryor, Dane Jackson, Mitch Moore, none of them are expected to play. Bates, Benford, Kumaro all came out of the game last weekend, neither of which are expected to play. They're riddled with injuries at the moment. The Ravens picked up quite a few injuries last weekend, but not to the extent in which the Bills have. Those 2 games, Colin, you're alluding to, when they were favourites, one was against the Patriots and the other was against the Chiefs last year. Big games where they were underdogs. Lamar found ways to win. I see this as a Ravens win as well. I think I picked the Ravens to be in the championship game against the Bills, and for me, these are the best 2 teams in football. We saw a couple of weeks back the frailties of the defence, but seemed to have rebounded reasonably well last week with 3 interceptions. I suppose you could question Mac Jones going to Parker 3 times and all 3 times and being intercepted, but Ravens for me. Bills will come strong again, but right now I think the Ravens are playing better football.
Mark, this is a hell of a game, mate. A hell of a game, and it's a game where the league is that tight at the minute in terms of wins and losses through 3 weeks, that it's not going to matter too much at the minute for the team that loses, because neither team is in the division. They're all in separate divisions, so it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great game to watch as a neutral. And obviously the Ravens had a bye week last week. That was a joke. I wanted to get it in there. It didn't. Here, the Patriots put it up to them last week. If the Bills can do the same, you never know.
The Bills have got far more talent in their team than the Patriots do at the moment, so I hope they put it more than just put it up to them. This could have repercussions, Michael, because the 2 of these teams arguably could be fighting out for seeding in the AFC. The Ravens do look the pick of the bunch in the AFC North at the moment, with the Bengals struggling and the Browns, not having a disappointing game, we'll say, against the Jets. But the storylines are there to be written. We've got 2 potential MVP candidates. this year, arguably every year. This is a rivalry that will continue on forever for the next decade or so, I would say, between the two quarterbacks, depending if Lamar stays there. But Lamar Jackson is breaking records left, right, and center. Last week, the great one that came out, people will remember the great Eagles quarterback, Brian especially, because he loves the Eagles so much. But Randall Cunningham, who excited many in the NFL, was until last week the only player who had ever thrown for 4 passing touchdowns and run for 100 yards and had a rushing touchdown in the same game. So, you're in that company, you're in that kind of stat-setting precedence. It's always exciting and interesting to see. And that's on the back of some other great performances in the first couple of weeks. So Lamar is carrying, I would say, in many respects, the Ravens at the moment. Harbaugh's still being aggressive on 4th down. They're still able to get that running game going. And I fully agree with Colum's point. If the weather is poorly, this will significantly favor the Ravens. The Bills can't run the ball. Let's just be really clear about that from day one. If this turns into a running game, it's over because the Bills' running game is still not where it should be. Now, I say that they did run it quite well against Miami, but the reality is that they didn't get the job done in that game. With all that being said, and with the injuries noted, Baltimore do have a few, but Buffalo have a ton still. I still can't feel that this is anything other than a big rebound game for the Bills. They won't like losing to a divisional rival in Miami. They certainly won't want to put 2 losses on the record this early in the season. And they won't want to lose seeding potential against the Ravens this early because then they'll be behind on the tiebreakers against Miami and Baltimore, which isn't the place to be. Yes, it's the second road game in a row. Yes, they are going from extreme heat now to different circumstances. But Josh Allen is still Josh Allen. That offensive line will protect him. And yes, Gabe Davis is questionable, but they've enough weapons. And I still think the Bills are the class act in the AFC. So I'm going for them to have a rebound game and bounce back from their disappointing performance against the Dolphins and exert their revenge against the Ravens.
Yeah,
sorry, man. I just want to say it's been an interesting week for coordinators. Like Mike McDonald, the Ravens coordinator, was slammed last week after that 4-quarter fiasco against the Dolphins. I wouldn't say his defense rebounded fantastically in Foxborough, but they did do enough. They got the 3 interceptions. Ken Dorsey this week has been scrutinised and criticised by Bills fans, even though his quarterback threw for over 400 yards. We saw the reaction at the end of the game. Already people are saying, you're not Brian Dable, and we're already recognising that, which is probably a little bit harsh, but he needs a rebound game. He needs that offence to put up more than 19 points for the team that had Josh Allen at 15 of 17 for 150 yards and a touchdown. Looked like he was having a perfect game. Ends up with 400 yards and they only put up 19 points. They'll expect a big rebound. I'm not going to say he's under pressure, but he's always going to get scrutinised because of the relationship in which Dable and Josh Allen had. So it'll be interesting to see how well this offense does play on Sunday.
Okay. Forgot how to make a pick there. Bills, Ravens. I don't really think the weather's going to be an issue personally. I think it's all talked. You're talking to a teacher, lad, or former teacher that used to get snow days or like hurricane days or some sort of bad weather days, and there wouldn't be any bad weather at all. So until it happens, I don't really care. The way I see it is this: Lamar Jackson hasn't just passed for 749 yards this season. He's ran through 3 games 243 yards. Mark Andrews has been targeted 31 times, 3 touchdowns already for 245 yards. He didn't score a touchdown week 1. He was elite last week. But the funny thing is, they're playing the Buffalo Bills, and I know I said about the Bengals going up against a gas Dolphins team. I understand the Bills put everything on the field offensively on Sunday, to an extent, bar a run game, and I'm going to contradict myself here. I've got the Bills winning this game. I think they're a better team than the Bills. I think they're a better team than the Ravens in the sense of I think Josh Allen's just going to go out and ball out, and they'll find a way to work the run game. I don't think the run game will be sufficient enough in terms of what it needs to be, but I think it'll get closer to that. And when you got Stephon Diggs and Isaiah McKenzie with Gabe Davis and Josh Allen just playing the best way that he can play, I think it'll be a shootout, and I think the Bills will win by a field goal. And I'm sorry that folks, the people watching this, that I messed up the graphic. There it is.
It happens, Michael. It happens. I was just going to say one last thing on the run game on this one. It's fascinating, really. The leading rusher on both teams, it's the quarterback on both teams. Slightly more dynamic from Lamar Jackson, but that gives you an indication as to where have all the good running backs gone. These two teams don't really need them.
Talking about quarterbacks, Cooper Rush going up against Carson Wentz. I'm picking the Cowboys. Colin, who are you picking?
For this one, well, we were talking earlier about the Bengals and the white helmet and the uniforms, and this is another one. The Commanders are going to unveil their new all black uniforms. So that will, and I see Ron Rivera was asked about that, and I think he probably would prefer to be maybe focusing on that than the issues that his O-line have had. For me, the Commanders are dealing with even more O-line injuries, and they already had injuries there. But the stat that stands out is that the Commanders have allowed league-leading 15 sacks. The Cowboys lead the league with 13 sacks. Micah Parsons was on Twitter this week talking about how in football you get 17 days in the regular season to show how good you can be, and he wants to make sure every single one of them count. He has been incredible. To me, he is the standout, I think, for defensive player of the year. It doesn't tend to go to secondary guys, so I think Patrick Surtain will miss out there, but he has taken over games, whoever he has gone up against, and it is insane to say that he has stepped in terms of Dak Prescott getting injured. It's an edge rusher who has helped to alleviate the pressure on Dallas. He's in his second season in the league, and he is a force of nature, and he is going to be the difference here. Carson Wentz is in for another long afternoon. The Dallas Cowboys are going to win this one.
Micah Parsons had 17 sacks in 18 games leading into Monday Night Football. Didn't get a sack on Monday, but did more than enough to disrupt the team. DeMarcus Lawrence had three sacks on Monday, and you look at, as you said, you look at this Washington offensive line. They can't seem to keep Carson Wentz up. They've got players if they can get the ball out. Davis, McLaurin, Dotson have already had reasonably good starts to the season, but Cowboys for me all day long. I think it'll be a very comfortable win.
Brian, you picked the Commanders last week. What's changed? Genuinely, is it just Carson
Genuinely
Wentz?
changed. What's changed? I thought their defense would be much better last week. I thought they'd be able to cope better with that. Wideouts from the Eagles. They had two safeties that came back last week. Strong safety, free safety. I thought that would help them stop the run and keep Hurts in check. But I didn't foresee an offense that just did absolutely nothing throughout the course of the game. Because if you look at the stats for the first two games leading up to that, Wentz at 700 yards. He had second most touchdowns in the league. He had been explosive despite some erratic play. We didn't see any of that materialise last week, and they're going against a defence that, in my opinion, is much better than the Eagles' defence. So there's your reasons.
Last week was like the longest yard. That's all I could compare it to. It was that poor. Then again, you could argue that the people in the longest yard were probably better than the Commanders last week. Mark, it's your stage. Sorry, I've taken the baton away from you.
No, you're right, Michael. I was just thinking back, actually, the best social media post I saw last week was the Eagles rubbing out the W in the center of the Commanders field and replacing it with an L, which was quite amusing to see on Twitter. I'm also realizing that you can be tired working on stuff, which is why on the YouTube and Twitter live stream here, Michael's flashed up all our picks a couple of times, which is all good to see.
I don't have the second overlay. Basically, I haven't got Brian's pick on the screen yet, unfortunately.
It's all right, mate. Listening to thinking about that, though, and about people being tired, if you're listening to this on the podcast, a couple of people could be very tired the weekend, which would be the Washington defense. Allen and Sweat don't mind playing Dallas. They have a number of sacks against them. But if the Commanders have any chance, they've got to be on it all game and ruining Cooper Rush's life. Cooper Rush, the stat coming out this week, obviously, is he's the the first undrafted rookie to win his first 3 games since Hall of Famer Kurt Warner. I always love the way they carve that out. It's like, oh, Hall of Famer. So look at the comparison. This is great. Look, he's surprised. He's proved very serviceable. I had picked the Giants on Monday Night Football. I thought that they'd be able to get to Cooper Rush and make enough plays to win the game. Didn't turn out like that, of course. But he has proved serviceable and competent. And if he can, we talked about a bit about this in the offseason. That backup quarterback position is so critical because if your lead guy is out for 6 games, can he at least go 3-3? Can he at least keep you in the season? Or, because if he's going 1-5, 0-6, what's the point? That's what happened, unfortunately, to the Saints last year. They were down to 3rd and 4th choices. But if he can keep them there or thereabouts, pick up a few wins along the way. When Dak Prescott comes back, this season is not over for the Cowboys. My pick for winning the NFC East is still alive as well, which I would personally like, if only for bragging rights on the show. And I do think Cooper Rush will have enough to stave off the Commanders this week. Wentz, I've said it all along, I think he's a nightmare. I think it's going to be a nightmare offense for the Commanders all season long. And they've got some players there that deserve better. Ron Rivera, frankly, deserves better, but he is not being given the pieces sufficiently to succeed. Cowboys, Prescott-less and all, will win another NFC East divisional game.
I have really been impressed with Pollard on the run. The game, look, I'm going to be honest with you, I fell asleep Monday night. I'm finding it hard to watch these Monday night games, boys, honest to God, but I watched it back the next morning. Really, really impressed with the combination of Pollard. Now I think Pollard over 100 yards, now they had like 75. Like if everybody can just sit in Dallas now, take the financial side out of it and go, right, Pollard's RB1, Elliott's RB2, metaphorically, and just go in and have Cooper Rush. I mean, Cooper Rush has come into a situation in the 3rd or 4th quarter against Tampa Bay in week 1 when everyone wrote the Cowboys off, including me. Like everyone wrote them off. And I have to give it to the Cowboys. They've really proved people wrong, but more so as well, they've got more assets in terms of the wideouts. Noah Brown is averaging 71 yards and 5 receptions per game. There's another guy as well, I can't pronounce his surname. Is it the weird surname, tight end? I haven't got it in front of me. I don't want to say like
Heathcroft.
I was going to say Pendergast there. I don't know why I was going to say that. That's shocking. But the fact that Cooper Rush can go into this offense and take them down to a level, to go to MetLife, and what for a neutral was great to hear, especially in the first half, the noise. It's been a long time, and it was just great to see it, and long may it continue. The Giants are probably going to go 3-1 this weekend against the Bears. Let's be honest, lads. Let's get that pick out of the way right now. But yeah, really, really impressed with the Cowboys on both sides of the ball. Micah Parsons, as Colin said, 2 tackles for loss, 4 sacks already this season. And this game will be over by the half, but more so, I think this game is going to be interesting because I think now that Ron Rivera will be the first coach to go this year. I don't think Ron Rivera sees out the season in Washington.
I would love if the ownership changed in Washington. I think most of the league would want the ownership to change in Washington. And remember, this is the game that last year where the benches didn't work. There was also the raw sewage that was running through the stadium at one point, and there was the wall that collapsed and nearly took out Jalen Hurts. So I don't know if anyone saw the photos that were on Twitter as well of the seats in the stadium last. No, the seats which looked like something from the an 80s cinema. Beginning to peel, and they desperately need a new owner.
A bit like Casement Park. Shout out to Irish Cowboys on Twitter who said Hendershot as well. Appreciate it. Brian, it sounds like you have something to say.
No, Michael, I've done nothing to say at all.
Oh, okay, no worries. All right, have we got any questions that we're going to pronounce?
We do indeed. We had one from Fred who is asking about the Steelers QB situation, and we'll talk about, I suppose, the Steelers Jets game tomorrow on tomorrow night's show, because that's when we are back. But in terms of the QB situation, it might be interesting to have a discussion before we finish up. We will be out of here by 11:15. But Michael, Steelers QB situation. We heard Mike Tomlin say he is sticking with Mitchell Trubisky. How long does he remain defiant?
What's the Steelers' record at the moment?
1-2.
Yeah.
They're going 1-3 this weekend.
Okay, that's because Zach Wilson.
But is he making the change after that?
I know. I was just waiting for a reaction. And I was going to go in. I don't think he will. I think he's too stubborn, and you've seen it in his press conference. Was it last Thursday night? I mean, the Steelers have all the benefits. They've had extra time off to go into this game. I don't think that Kenny Pickett is ready to play in the NFL yet, and we can start all this like, oh well, is there ever a time to play in it? Yada yada yada. He needs to sit behind for a year and wait, or at least a few more months. The Steelers didn't have a quarterback last year. They were lucky enough that they had a serviceable older player that could get it over the line for them. But look at Joe Flacco in New York. I mean, Joe Flacco should be starting this game on Sunday, and we'll talk about it tomorrow night. Kenny Pickett shouldn't be starting. Tomlin won't start him, and it's well, look, Tomlin's been incredible in Pittsburgh. To have that record and that run for all those years, it's going to end this year. But Pittsburgh aren't a stupid or a shady franchise. They'll give him time. They'll give him the assets. I just don't understand how they knew for years Ben was going to go, and like I trusted him in the press conference when he says he believes in Mitchell Trubisky. Then I watched the first game of the year. Then I picked the Steelers to beat the Patriots. And now I look like an idiot. So no, I'm not having it. No.
Colin, I said on our season preview show that Kenny Pickett will be playing by week 6 or week 7, and this will be the reason why they have a forced losing season record from Mike Tomlin since he went in as the head coach there. I'm not changing my tune too much. I'm looking at the bye week. Bye week is week 9. I will be picking the Steelers on Sunday to win the game, and I do think the Jets should be playing Wilson because they've been consistent with the message from day one. He'll be back in week 4 and he'll be playing in week 4, and that's what they've honoured. So no matter how well Flacco played, because they recognise the future is Zach Wilson. At some stage, the Steelers' ownership will turn around to Mike Tomlin and say, as stubborn as you are, you have to recognise the future for us is potentially Kenny Pickett, whether people think he's the answer or not. That's where they see it, and at some stage he has to play, and he has to play this season. So for me, by the middle of the season, if not, it'll be after the bye week.
Mark?
Yeah, Zach Wilson's an interesting case study, of course, because, we say he's the future, but will he recover from that horrific first season? And his confidence still looks shot and everything. Now, this Jets team is making Joe Flacco look good, so maybe he's going to be finally surrounded with some talent to allow himself to shine. But that is a case in point where you don't play players too soon in the NFL and give them a chance to develop. I'm not saying we go back to the 80s and 90s where you used to have a rookie quarterback basically redshirt the year every single time and, play sporadically or start to be phased in year 2. These are valuable, okay, they're people as well, but they're valuable assets. And you have to make sure you know whether you've got a stud or a dud pretty swiftly on. The reality, however, is it still feels and seems too early for Kenny Pickett. And if you bring him out too soon, you're going to destroy his confidence. The Steelers don't have much in that offense. There's not much for him to play with. And all you're going to do is potentially threaten his long-term development. We saw it with Jimmy G in San Francisco recently. Sometimes the most popular man in the entire football team, according to the fans, is the backup quarterback. Because the backup quarterback represents hope and difference and is going to be the cure to all ills. It's too soon. Keep Mitch Trubisky, stay with the plan, and bring on Pickett in due course. It might be hard in the short term, but as they used to say in Philadelphia with the 76ers, trust the process.
Mark, I like the way you say the most popular man is the backup quarterback, because that's what happened to Mitch Trubisky. He didn't play last year for Buffalo, apart from the odd snap. And yeah, he was highly sought after, come free agent by a number of teams, and obviously the Steelers won out and gave him the 2-year contract. And yet already he's the guy that the fans want. Quickly moved on, and let's see the young up-and-coming player.
Yeah, doesn't always happen, Brian. We've got Marcus Mariota as backup now, getting a chance again. Mitch Trubisky, the McCown brothers used to get multiple chances. but I never remember. There was a guy, Colin Kaepernick. That's what it was. He didn't get another chance. Well, can't think why.
Well,
And,
I think it will be very interesting. I don't know. I don't think you make any pronouncements on Kenny Pickett. I am somebody who thinks you should play QBs from the off, but I think you do give them talent. If you look at the talk around Justin Herbert before he came into the league, there was all sorts of talk, and then he has taken to it like a duck to water. So certainly an interesting situation to keep an eye on in Pittsburgh.
shout out to everyone watching tonight for the comments. Mark Simpson saying 11 more sleeps. Go Giants. Go Giants indeed. Go Pack. Go Vikings. Go Saints. Go. We'll be in London at 9:30 Sunday morning. Or me and Colin will be in London on Saturday. Give us a shout on Twitter. DMs are open. I think Columns isn't, but we'll get him sorted on that tonight. And I will say one more thing on backup quarterbacks, and we're going to end the show on this. Backup quarterbacks provide certainty, and in some reasons, in Jimmy Garoppolo's, they provide safety. Good night, lads. See you tomorrow at 9:30. Good luck.